What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel. But let's get right into it. This game will be at 3 o'clock Central Time, so 4 o'clock Eastern Time, and the game will be on CBS just like it is every year. It's just a 30-minute delay. Normally they play at 3:30 Eastern Time. Instead, they'll play at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. They always do that for the SEC Championship for whatever reason. I don't know, but that really doesn't matter. You take a look here. LSU is favored by 7.5 points in this one. The over-under is 54.5. So Vegas is expecting about the average amount of points in this game. Not really a shootout, but not a defensive battle either. Pretty much an average game. And again, LSU favored by more than a touchdown. Injuries, a big problem for Georgia coming into this, or just players missing. You got George Pickens, who is going to be suspended for the first half because of the fight against Georgia Tech. You got Lawrence Cager, the wide receiver. He's going to be out for this game. And then DeAndre Swift, also banged up, is listed as probable, so we expect him to play. But remember a couple of years ago, you had Kerryon Johnson for Auburn, got injured against Alabama. They went into the SEC Championship, and he was not even close to healthy, and you could tell on the field. So we'll see if DeAndre Swift is actually going to be 100% or close to 100%. And then you've also got some players banged up on defense for Georgia as well that should play in this game but are dealing with injuries. Grant Delpit for LSU is listed as probable. I would expect him to play in this one. You look at the stats for these two teams. Points per game, LSU scoring a lot of them, 48.7 points per game. What a difference a year makes. Defensively, Georgia only giving up 10.4 points per game. They are very solid on defense, and it's really strength on strength. The LSU offense is their strength. The Georgia defense is their strength. Which one will win out? Total yards per game, Georgia only 420 yards compared to 560 yards per game for LSU. Through the air, a big advantage for LSU. On the ground, though, Georgia actually has the advantage, averaging 200 yards per game compared to just 170 for LSU, and a lot of that is just the style of play for these two teams. Defensively, Georgia is only giving up 257 yards per game. LSU gives up 345. Pretty big gap there. Passing yards allowed per game, Georgia giving up 186, LSU 221. Not a huge gap there, but yes, of course, Georgia has the better defense against the pass. And these two teams have not played the same schedule, by the way, so I think the numbers maybe skewed just a little bit because LSU, in my opinion, has played a much tougher schedule, and they've played more explosive offenses. They played Alabama, and they played Texas early in the year. At that time, Texas really had it going on offense. So keep that in mind. Plus, they played the rushing attack of John Rice Plumlee and Ole Miss. Georgia did not play that. So yeah, I think there are some things to look at there. Rushing yards allowed, Georgia only giving up 71, and LSU giving up 124 yards per game on the ground. That's the strength of this Georgia defense. You cannot run the ball on them, but the good news for LSU is they don't really like running the ball like they used to. Sure, they're going to run it some, but they're going to use Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably more in the passing game in this one. And I think that passing game is going to be really tough to stop. Georgia, again, has not faced an offense like this. They didn't play Alabama this year. But on the flip side, you go back to last year, Georgia probably played Tua in that passing attack better than anyone all year. I know Clemson played them. They wound up blowing them out. But if you look back at that game, Alabama went up and down the field on Clemson. They just couldn't score in the red zone. Georgia really clamped down on Tua. And I know he wasn't 100%, but they did a nice job on him. Can they do that? Have that same type of success this year against an LSU offense that's playing, I think, at a similar level that Alabama offense was playing last year? So that's worth watching. If Georgia can slow them down just a little bit, I think there's an opportunity for them to slow the game down, pound it on the ground. If DeAndre Swift is healthy, I think they will have success running the football. LSU, again, not great against the run this year, but it's been more the running quarterbacks, I think, that have given them some trouble on the ground. So that's something Georgia does not have. Jake Fromm obviously not going to run it much. There are just a lot of different factors in this game, and I believe if both teams were 100% going in, I think LSU would still be favored. I think they'd still be favored by 5 or 6 points in this one because of that offense. And usually in this day and age, when you have really good defense versus really good offense, the really good offense wins out. If Georgia can't slow LSU down, I don't think they're going to be able to score enough points. They're not going to be able to win a shootout, and I don't think they're going to win this game. I've got LSU winning it by 2 possessions. I think the Tigers win it 38-23. I just, again, I don't see anyone being able to hold this LSU offense down that much. I know Auburn held them to 24 points or whatever it was, but if you go back and watch that game, LSU really shot themselves in the foot with some penalties, some turnovers, struggled a little bit in the red zone. You look at the total yards from that game, they had a ton. I think Burrow had over 300 yards passing against a really good Auburn defense. Now, if Georgia can make those types of plays, if they can get a couple of timely turnovers and make some stops in the red zone, things like that, that's what they're going to have to be able to do. But I just think this LSU team, when they got moved to number 2, you saw it against Texas A&M last week. This team actually, their motivation went up a notch. The defense played way better against A&M. I mean, LSU did a better job against the Texas A&M offense than Georgia did. Now, keep that in mind. You talk about how bad this LSU defense is. When they really want to, when they got to get it done, they get stops. And they've really done that all year. It's just been a team that's done what they've needed to do. When the game gets out of hand, they don't play as well, and you know there's no excuse for that. I'm just telling you that's what has happened this year. The Ole Miss game, everyone talks about how Ole Miss just destroyed that LSU defense. Well, they pitched a shutout until almost halftime of that game. It's not like when the game was in the balance early on, LSU was giving up a lot of yardage. It was just in the second half when they kind of had built a big lead, and I think Ole Miss just found some things there. I don't see LSU's offense being slowed down. Just like their defense, when their defense needs to get a stop, they get a stop. When their offense needs a score, Joe Burrow delivers. Go back to every game this year, all the big games, when they've needed to score, when the game's been kind of tight and they've had to have a touchdown, Joe Burrow has gotten the job done. Go back to Alabama. They started kind of struggling there. Alabama came back in the game. Well, it looked like Alabama could get the ball back and could even take the lead in that game if they got to stop. What did Joe Burrow do? He took the team right down the field like it was nothing and scored a touchdown late in that game. Go back to the Florida game. It was a close back-and-forth game. We got into the second half. LSU, when they needed to score, they scored. And I just think this team's too good. I think Georgia is not going to be able to offensively keep up with LSU. Jake Fromm has not looked very good this year. And yeah, they might be able to run the football some, but I don't think that's going to be enough. I think they get stopped in the red zone a few times. That's why I'm going with 23. I think they kick 3 field goals in this game. And it's kind of close at halftime. I don't think LSU just dominates this game from start to finish. I think Georgia does a good job in the first half of maybe controlling the clock, running the ball, keeping it fairly low scoring. But again, when LSU needs to score, when they need to pick things up offensively, I think that they do that in the second half. I think Joe Burrow throws for 300 yards. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a big factor in this one, both on the ground, but even more so in the passing game. And I think LSU wins this game fairly easily. I've kind of gone back and forth. I was thinking a 10 to 14 point game is really what I had all year. But as I watched this Georgia defense, I started thinking, you know, Georgia, they might have a chance in this game. They might have a chance. And now they had the injuries, and I don't have a good feeling about the Bulldogs in this one. I think LSU wins it. I think LSU, I don't know that it's going to be enough to get them back to the number 1 seed, but they obviously clearly will make the playoff if they win this game. Even if they win by 1 point, they're going to be in. But I think they probably wind up staying at that number 2 spot. Depending on what happens with Ohio State, and I haven't done a prediction for that game yet. I will do that here coming up probably tomorrow or Thursday, because we're going to do all the conference championship games. But I want to know what you guys think. Who do you have winning this game? LSU versus Georgia. LSU a pretty big favorite in this one. It's offense versus defense. If Georgia can slow the game down, come up with some timely stops, they'll have a shot. I'm not saying they have no chance. For my prediction, and I'm not going to say that happens, I think LSU pulls away late and they win it 38-23.